Entrepreneur, author, and photographer James Clear shares his insights how he challenges himself to reach goals in 1% increments.
Welcome to Biz Stories Shared, where storytellers share their inspiration, motivation, some disappointments, and how they applied the lessons that led them to success. Stories are gifts. Listen as these gifts are shared. Now, here is your host, Charlotte Plott.
Okay, storytellers, this is Charlotte Plott. Now let's get started. I am simply thrilled to introduce my guest today, James Clear. Are you ready to be a storyteller?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. James Clear is a writer, entrepreneur, and travel photographer in more than 20 countries. JamesClear.com is the home of his life's work, and the site is read by over 200,000 unique visitors each month. Additionally, more than 60,000 people receive his free email newsletter each week. His work as a writer and photographer focuses on sharing ideas and inspiration for living a healthier, happier, and a more adventurous life. In 2012, James was named a finalist for the Travel Photographer of the Year award for his work on the September 11th Memorial in New York City. Okay, James, are you ready to go?
Yes, sir.
I've given our listeners just a little overview. So, James, if you would just take a minute and tell us about you personally, we want to get to know you, and then an overview of your business.
Sure. Well, Charlotte, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. As you mentioned, I write about habits and behavior change and sort of the science of habit formation and how we can apply that to improving our health and wellness and happiness. I often use examples from my experiences as an entrepreneur. So I'll talk about business habits. As a travel photographer, so I'll talk about creativity and artistic habits. And also as a weightlifter, so I'll talk about fitness and health habits and what I've learned as an athlete, and also just building them after my athletic career. So those are sort of the practical applications of my work, but I try to ground everything that I talk about in science and cite studies that are repeatable and verified and are sort of the scientific consensus rather than an edge case here or there. So most of my work is backed up by some sort of science, but hopefully useful in the real world as well.
Understandable why you have so many followers, because you are basing it on science, and people therefore can trust what you're saying. So that's a good background for it.
Yeah, that's the hope. It's actually surprisingly difficult to cite really high quality scientific studies. There's a lot of bad or sloppy science out there, and so I spend a fair amount of my time parsing through that and trying to make sure that the research is solid and replicatable and repeatable, and something that'll stand the test of time rather than just a finding that popped up here or there. So I try to write about effects and ideas that are going to be there for the long term, and that in many cases are common sense or proven, but I talk about ways that the science backs this up, or the ways that we can maybe implement them in a simpler, easier fashion than we have before.
Well, I think you're succeeding at it. Well, thank you for the overview of you and your business. And so I like to start off every show with your favorite quote. James, what's your favorite success quote, and how do you apply this to your everyday thinking?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of great quotes out there. One that sticks in my head a lot is "Save one life, save the world entire," which is from the Talmud, and that's it. It's I for me as a creator is something good to keep in mind. I don't have to do something world changing to make the world a better place. I just focus on helping one person at a time with their habits, or one reader at a time, and nudging them slightly in one way or another that hopefully is beneficial. And that's valuable. You don't have to create something famous to create something valuable, but the main quote that I wanted to share is from Jim Rohn, and his quote is, "Success is a few simple disciplines practiced every day, while failure is a few simple errors in judgment repeated every day." And I think that that speaks a lot to what I do with regards to habits and behavior change, and making these small incremental, maybe 1% improvements instead of a small incremental 1% decline. And those tiny gains add up surprisingly quickly, and I think can bring us pretty significant results, whether that's in our health or our business or our art or creative pursuits.
Well, that does give me hope when you say if we just do a 1% increase in what we're trying to do, that it can mount up and add up and keep us on the right track. And how would you suggest that the storytellers apply that mantra to their journey?
Sure. Well, one of the stories I like sharing is from a coach named Dave Brailsford. And Brailsford was a cycling coach in Great Britain. And when the British team brought him on as a coach, they had never won a Tour de France. And they said, "Hey, this is why we're hiring you. We'd like to win one." And so his approach was to look at everything the cycling team did and try to improve it by just 1%. So he looked at all the things you might expect, like the training regimen and the nutrition of the riders. But they also looked at things that a lot of people wouldn't expect, like the weight of the bike tires or the type of seat that they rode on or the pillow that gave people the best night's sleep. And they brought that pillow with them to hotels. The type of massage gel that they used on the riders to help them recover, the soap that they used to reduce infection, and which one led to the healthiest riders over the long run. So they tried to improve every possible thing they can think of by 1%. And what happened, Brailsford thought, hey, if we can actually commit to this and make it happen, we'll win the Tour de France in 5 years or so. And he was wrong. They actually won it in 3 years. And
Oh
then they
my.
repeated again and won it the fourth year. And then when they went to the Olympics in 2012, they won 70% of the gold medals available. So the success of this idea of let's just improve things by 1% is cumulative in nature. They start to stack on top of each other. And anyone can make improvements and gains like that. So I would say to the storytellers or to you or to myself, find those areas that are just little 1% gains for you, right? And treat each thing like an experiment. How can I find a pillow that's slightly better for me to sleep on? How can I find a process that makes my writing habit each week slightly better? How can I get one extra push up in this week than I did last week? There are all sorts of these tiny gains around us in life. And if you can start to aggregate and accumulate those, you can increase in very small ways, which makes it easy and you don't require a lot of motivation in the beginning because you're just making small changes, but you end up seeing significant results over the long run.
When I reached out to you to be a guest, it was because you had talked about
Yeah,
stacking habits. Yes. And I tried one of yours, that one suggestion of yours, and it was to remember to take my vitamins. And I've stacked them after I take it after I eat breakfast, and now I'm been much better about remembering to take the vitamins. And so that is just one little incident of a 1%, and I can remember that so much easier than whatever I was doing before. So that 1% does have a lot of power.
yeah, that's another good example. Habit stacking, which is the idea that you tie a new habit to something you're already doing. So, for example, if you drink coffee every morning, then you say, when I have my coffee, I'll take my vitamins, for example, or whatever the process is for you. The nice thing about that is that that's another 1% gain, right? Just being more consistent. So in this case, you're not even doing anything new. You're not trying to do anything more impressive than what you've done before. You just want to do the thing that you know works more consistently. And that I think is a great place to start for anyone when it comes to these 1% gains is how can I be more consistent or do the right thing on a regular basis versus doing it sporadically or whenever I feel motivated or inspired to do so.
So sometimes when I'm trying to start something new, I do too many things and then I get overwhelmed. But when you were giving the example of the bicycle riders, they did a lot of things, 1% gains. So how do you suggest you be successful if you really want to do something big but in 1% gains like that?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. I think a couple things are important to notice. First, this took place over 3 years, so they did do a lot of things during that time span, but they didn't do them all on the same day.
Okay.
And secondly, they had a central thing that they were trying to get good at. So they were trying to get faster at riding bikes. That was the central right goal that they were working on. And I think often what we do is we say, oh, well, I want to get better at working out. I want to eat healthier and I want to meditate more. And I'd like to write, 3 times a week. And we pick all these different habits that we want to do.
Yes.
These are not related to the same one goal, unlike the riders, right? Where they picked one thing to
Oh.
focus on. So I would say decide what the most important habit is for you to focus on, and then look for little 1% ways to improve and increase in that one area. And then once you master that particular thing, or you're happy with where that is at, you can just keep that as a baseline and then add a new habit or behavior on. There are some researchers who say that you could add multiple habits at once, and the benefit of trying three at once, for example, is that if you fail on one or two, then you still have one that's going well, so you feel like you're making a little bit of progress. But I would caution you not to go above, say, three at one time. So you can maybe try to build your vitamin habit. You could try to do, one push up a day, and you could try to add writing for 15 minutes. Like this, these could be examples of three new habits that you're trying to add. But if you try to do more than that, each of those things are very small. But when you start to get really ambitious and add in a variety of things that are unrelated, it starts to become too many balls in the air. And personally, my approach is focus on one habit, build it, get it to a level where it's sustainable and you feel happy with it, then move on to the next one. And for me, that cycle usually ends up being 3 to 6 months, somewhere in there. So, as an example, the most recent habit that I've built is reading. And I realized that I read a lot, but a lot of what I was reading was online. I wasn't reading as many books as I wanted. So I started a habit of reading 20 pages every morning of a book. And I've churned through over 10 books at this point that way. And so that was a few months ago. And now that I've had that habit built as a baseline, now I'll go ahead and look to the next thing to build. But for the last few months, I was just focusing on that one habit and keeping everything else more or less the same.
Oh, those are very good examples. Thank you for that.
So
Well, James, with all of your specialty work in speaking, photography, and writing along the way, you maybe have had some failures. So I want to ask you to tell us of one of the times you just didn't get the results that you set out to achieve. You failed. You even fell flat on your face. I can't believe that. But if you did, would you tell us that story, just like we were sitting there next to you? And most importantly, the lesson that you learned.
yeah, sure. Well, there have been a lot of failures. Two, I've learned the most from those failures, probably.
Oh,
And third, I think that we should all, and myself included, because I don't do this often enough, take more risks where failure is a real option. I think that most of us don't do things where failure is a real option. Either we do something, but if we do fail, nobody will find out about it. We do something, or if we do fail, it's not going to be that big of a consequence. And so as a result, we end up not taking very many risks that are big and bold and would significantly drive us forward simply because we want to protect ourselves from the downside. But to answer your question about a failure that I had that taught me something and the lesson I learned, my very first business idea was a complete flop. This was a few years ago. A lot of people were making money and doing well with iPhone apps at the time, and I had never built a business before. And I thought, well, okay, I'm going to go ahead and start an iPhone app. That'll be how I build my first business. I had saved some money up. I paid $1,600 to have an app built by an engineering and programming team. They built the application. We launched it on iTunes, and I had no audience whatsoever. I had no one to send it to. I just thought if we build it, then iTunes will take care of the rest. And it totally flopped. To this day, it's not even available anymore. But during that year that it was up, it made $117. So I lost $1,500 on that. And while that was a painful lesson in the beginning to lose that money, it was also really valuable because one, I realized that I need to have an audience of some sort. Like you can't just build a product and trust that people will come. Like marketing is on me, and the responsibility to connect with people is on me. It's not anybody else's job. And so that was a good lesson for me to learn. And then secondly, I built something that I thought was interesting, but it didn't necessarily provide value to anyone. So I realized that I had to put the needs of others first. And I have a very much like servant leadership mentality. So that was natural for me, but I just didn't realize. I thought business was about making money, or business was about, I don't know, creating something interesting or some new technology. But once I realized that I had to serve first, and it was my responsibility to build the audience, those are two things that really catapulted my entrepreneurial career and made a big difference for me.
well, you certainly do serve others because of the number of people that go to your blog where you have 60,000 visitors a month. You're serving them because of the lessons that you teach them. So you really do have a servant attitude.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been great. It's been it's grown really quickly, so it's been nice.
Well, thank you for opening up and sharing that story. Sometimes it's hard to relive those painful moments, but a review every so often helps all of us to remember that we did learn lessons and they help us to move forward and, most importantly, realize how much we've grown. What I'd like to do now, James, is go to the other end of the spectrum. Let's talk about the time in your journey when you had an aha moment, when you became aware of the new path that you wanted to travel. Take us to that moment when you had that light bulb go off and take us through the steps that you took to turn that idea into success.
Yeah, that's a great question. May not be the same as everyone else's, but for me, there really hasn't been one light bulb moment. It's been a series of gradual small steps that eventually led me to where I am now. And I find that, especially, and it sounds like this question is sort of hinting at what was the aha moment that you had that sparked your idea of, hey, this is what I want to do with my life, or this is the mission I want to have. For me, I've known for a while that I have been sort of entrepreneurial or adventurous. So I knew I wanted to have some kind of thing that I created of my own. I knew that I had an interest in photography and travel. And so I wanted to have that baked in somehow. And then I've always been interested in science and health because I was an athlete all through college and I took science classes as well as a biomechanics major in undergrad and worked in medical practice and so on. So I had these interests. I had these things that I knew that I liked, but I didn't really have any moment where I was like, oh, hey, that's how I'll magically put it all together. It's been a very slow, gradual process of, okay, this is what I'm interested in. Here's the value it could provide to someone else. How do I merge these two and sort of live at that intersection? And then as time has gone on, and this is something writers speak about a lot, I had to find my voice. I had to figure
Oh,
out what it was that I wanted to write about and what that sounded like and how that resonated with other people and who my audience was. These are all things that came out of finding my voice. And it took me, honestly, I'm still finding it in some respects, but it's much more fine tuned now than it ever was before. So I'm just figuring out the details at this point, not the main idea. But it probably took me 2 years before I had that main idea figured out, and then an additional year of consistent writing after that before I really felt like, all right, this is kind of my niche, so to speak, or this is my groove that I'm in. And then now that I'm in that relative zone, it's just figuring out how to tweak that and sort of climb the pyramid, so to speak.
well, did you start out your writing like you mentioned earlier, that just having a discipline of writing so many minutes a day or so many words or pages a day?
Yeah, great question. I wish I could say yes because I think it would have benefited me, but the truth is I struggled as a writer for over 2 years before I had a consistent pattern of any type. So I used to think that my best writing happened whenever I got a spark of inspiration or a burst of an idea, some eureka moment. And what ended up happening is I convinced myself, hey, when I get this spark of creativity, that's when I write my best articles. So I should just wait until I feel motivated to get a spark and then I'll write then. And that what happened was that would end up being every 2 to 4 weeks, and it
Mm-hmm.
was very consistent. And I was speaking with a friend named Todd Henry, who's a published author. I said, Todd, what do you think about this idea of me writing whenever I feel, motivated or inspired? That's when I get my best ideas. And he said, well, that makes sense. I only write whenever I feel motivated too. It just happens to be every day at 8 a.m. So I thought that was what made me take a step back and be like, oh, professionals create on a schedule, amateurs create whenever they feel motivated or inspired. And so that was when I was like, all right, I need to set a schedule for myself. And the caveat to this is I had to set a schedule that allowed me to recover and that I could like stick with. So for a brief period, I tried to write 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and that lasted about 1 month before I just totally burnt out and it was too much for me.
Really?
And then on November 12th, 2012, which was the day that I started jamesclear.com, I set a Monday, Thursday writing schedule for myself. And I've stuck to that ever since. And I think I've only missed once. I had food poisoning when I was on the road in Italy. But other than that, every Monday and every Thursday. And that is one, a pace that I can sustain. Two, consistent enough that I don't just rely on whenever I get a spark of motivation. And
Okay.
three, there's enough space in there that I think I can produce something of a decent quality each time rather than just trying to churn out an idea really quick because I got an idea. And so that pattern of Monday Thursday has been a really good balance for me and has took a while, it took a couple of years, but that's made a big difference in my writing routine and my writing quality as well.
Well, that's a very good example of how we do have to try and see what routine will work for us. So that was a very good example. Thank you. Well, James, what is your proudest entrepreneurial moment?
Well, hopefully it's still to come, but so far I feel very proud that I can actually help people in the real world, I guess. I share information online, I write on the internet, and sometimes it's hard to see the person behind the screen. And whenever I get an email from a reader that says, I implemented this idea and I've lost, 20 pounds so far, or I implemented this idea and I've been able to write for the last month consistently, or I just got an email last week actually from someone who said that he went to see his brother, and his brother he was at a company event, and his brother had this shirt on instead of the rest of the company that said "Be the 1%," and it was about making these 1% gains. And he was like, "Where'd you get that?"
Really?
It's like, "Oh, we read this guy's article online, and we decided to make it our company motto for the year."
Oh my
And,
gosh.
and so things like that are very proud moments for me. I think where I know that I was able to make some small difference or nudge people in a certain direction that they found beneficial or positive. And the hard part is sometimes when you put things up on the web, you never hear from or see the people again. If that guy wouldn't have ran into his brother when he was wearing that shirt, I never would have known about that story. And
Right.
sometimes it's nice to remind yourself that there's this ripple effect of putting your work out into the world, and you may never see or come across the people who experienced or benefited from that. But knowing that there are people who are benefiting is probably the proudest thing for me.
I can see why. 1% on a t shirt had to be an extraordinarily happy time for you when you saw that. James, what is the one thing that is really exciting you in your business right now?
Well, there are a few things. One is just the general growth of jamesclear.com. I feel good about how quickly it's moving, and people are enjoying it and sharing it and so on. So it's always exciting to be moving forward. But I think the biggest thing is I'm starting to step into the work more. And what I mean is like me getting in front of my work and really being like, this is what I stand for. These are the principles that I believe in. These are the things that are getting people results in the real world. And it takes a little while to get to that because in the beginning, you're testing ideas. You're not quite sure what your voice is. You're not quite sure what the central things are that work for people because you haven't had a lot of people go through your program yet or read your work yet. And as time has gone on now, and I've started to develop a little bit more of a feel for what actually works and what people resonate with, I'm starting to develop more confidence in the work. And because of that, I'm looking to set a higher standard because I know which areas to dive into more deeply. And so right now, for example, I'm working on building a very robust research review process that allows me to parse through the bad science, only focus on the really great repeatable stuff, and give people the highest quality information that is the most likely to stand the test of time. And I feel really excited and good about that.
Well, that does sound wonderful and something that will really benefit people. Using information gathered from your articles at networking meetings. One particular article was about becoming rapidly successful. And quoting you, you said, and while it is true that smarts and effort will help you, finding rapid success comes down to one thing: connecting with influencers in your industry. In other words, make friends. That's it. We think that we have to I think, become the influencer. And you were just saying, just make friends.
Yeah, well, I think that the maybe the only cheat code, so to speak, or the only accelerator of success is to surround yourself with other people who that level of success is normal for. So often the environment that we're in, whether it's the people that surround us or the physical space that we're in or the place where we work, these things influence us in ways that we often don't realize or to a degree that we often don't realize. And so simply by inserting yourself in an environment that is surrounded with people who have an incredible level of success, or surrounding yourself with people who are doing things you're proud of or have an approach to business or life that you would like to follow, you take on some of those personalities. And I can tell you for myself, I have surrounded myself now with enough people that are very successful in business that it seems normal and natural to me to get to that level. I'm not to their level yet, but I'm surrounded by so many friends who are experiencing and enjoying that it doesn't seem out of reach at all. It's very standard. And that I think is a very powerful place to be. And you don't have to be the famous person or turn into someone new overnight. You can just connect with those people and start to soak in and learn things from them.
Yeah, oh, thank you. And James, what is the best business advice you have ever received?
For me, when I was starting out as an entrepreneur, the best advice that I got was to try things until something comes easily. And so that first year, I tried probably 5 to 10 different ideas, just put up a different web page, send some people there, see if they would convert, see how that worked, so on. Try a variety of offers to see what people resonated with. And the reason that this is important is that it's really easy to spend all this time tweaking and adjusting one little offer. I think this is why people spend so much time on business plans. It's just more planning and more tweaking and more adjusting. But no matter how much tweaking you do, it's the same basic idea at the end of the day. I think you should try radically different ideas, completely different businesses, completely different approaches, all of which you're excited about, of course, to see which one works the best and which one people resonate with the most, and then just go with that one, rather than trying to map it all out in your head and predict what's going to be successful. The caveat to this, and the hard part that there is to balance with this, and this is true for all entrepreneurs, is that at some point you have to stop testing a bunch of different things to see what comes easily and focus on one thing. And when that point occurs and how you make that transition, I don't have the answer to, and I'm not really sure anybody has the perfect answer to. And that's just like part of the tension of being an entrepreneur, of constantly trying new ideas to see what works and then doubling down on something that does. And how you make that choice is a tough part of the process. But trying things until something comes easily was a good piece of advice for me.
Oh, I can see that is a good piece of advice. Thank you for sharing that. Well, now I'm going to ask you some specific processes that show how you achieve becoming such a successful entrepreneur. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds great.
All right. What is your vision of the future of your business?
I see myself building a business that moves the public health forward by helping individuals. So, in many cases, public health projects are focused on population level increases, so decreasing the mortality rate or increasing the length of life for a population. I would love to be able to nudge and move the world in that direction in some type of positive public health way, but do it by connecting with each individual, with the individual reader, with the individual person who comes across my site and consumes my work in some way, who can hopefully improve their habits, see some measurable increase in their life. And as a result of doing this with 50,000 or 80,000 or 100,000 or a million people over the next few years, improve the public health in some way. And so that I think is kind of the vision that I have for the future.
James, can you share one of your personal habits that you strongly believe contributes to your success?
Sure. Well, the biggest one for my business is writing every Monday and Thursday, so that made a big difference. But we've already talked about that. The one that I wouldn't have a business without, and that also provides sanity and balance for the rest of my life, is weightlifting every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If I didn't have the balance that lifting provided and that training provided, I would have, talked myself out of a business 1,000 years ago, or, just gone crazy or whatever. I mean, that's the thing that helps bring me back to center. And it's also, with regards to habits, a keystone habit for me. So when I lift every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, not only do I feel good about getting strength training in and taking care of my body and getting stronger, I also have a variety of benefits that sort of cascade from that one event. So I focus better. Usually after my workout, I have about an hour of like really clear focus. I sleep better, which means that I wake up more well rested and I can put better energy to my work the next morning. I tend to eat better. I could say, oh, I worked out so I can cheat a little bit, but instead, what happens is I work out and I think, oh, I don't want to ruin this, and so my nutrition improves. And then I also tend to de-stress and feel, better about just life in general and don't let the little things get to me. And so these qualities, lower stress, better sleep, better nutrition, improved focus, these are not things that I tried to improve with any one little habit, but they just sort of naturally flowed from this habit of strength training. And so for that reason, it's probably central to my success.
Well, if more talk was done about all of the benefits from exercising that you just shared, maybe I would exercise more diligently and more regularly. That was a very good description. Do you have an internet resource like Evernote that helps your efficiency to share with our listeners?
Yeah, great question. So I try to keep things as simple as possible. I do use Evernote. The tools, the tech tools, the pieces of software that drive my business are probably as follows. So one, Gmail for email. Two, Evernote, which is where I write my articles and also where I categorize ideas and research that I come across. And then Aweber is what I use for my email marketing service. So that's how I connect with my audience. They sign up for the newsletter there, and that's how I email them. And those are, and then Gumroad, which is the payment processor that I use to sell my products and services. Those four are basically all that I really need to create my business. So I write. Hopefully, if I look at how I'm going to improve my business and how those tools will help me, they're all four central to my process. So write better articles. That's a way to improve my business. All right, well, now I need to spend more time in Evernote, just researching, spending more time writing the words on the page. Once I write those articles, reach out to people who could help publish them or share them with the world. So that's sending emails. So that's me spending time in Gmail. Also responding to reader concerns or customer concerns. That's email. Publishing products and putting them out there for people to buy. That's Gumroad. And then the thing that connects all of those together is Aweber, the email marketing. That's how people hear from me. So those are the services that I use and rely on.
Oh, I can see that you have a very good group of them that are very powerful. And I keep wanting to say this about your blog. The comments, I don't know of anybody that I've ever read that has the number of comments that you do. So that is, I think, a really tribute to how people really do enjoy and benefit from what you write.
Oh, thank you so much.
Do you want referrals? And if so, who's a perfect referral for your business?
Yes, I do want referrals. I don't go about it in the way that I think probably the typical business referral would be. So if I look at the path that my readers follow, usually they'll come to the website first, and there'll be a lot of people who come. So, like last month, about 300,000 people came to my site. And then from those people, some of them will choose to sign up for the email list. So, this is the next step on the path. Right now, I have about 80,000 or so who are on that email list. Then, of the people who are on the email list, many of them, a very high percentage, will end up reading my articles each week. But some of those will choose to purchase a course or a workshop or a book from me. And those are the people that end up becoming a customer. So, what I would like, certainly I like referrals from traffic sources, people who could send more traffic to my website at the beginning, and that's just more people at the top or the beginning of the path, and they can make their way down. I also love having referrals from readers, and I'm very fortunate in this regard. I've grown a lot through word of mouth from the people on my email list. So a lot of my readers will get my articles each week, enjoy them, and then forward them or send them to a friend or send a friend an email and say, hey, I like this guy's stuff. You should go check it out. And so in that respect, I get a lot of referrals that way. And then if those people come and enjoy my work, then maybe eventually they'll buy. But I don't get referrals in the way that the traditional business would, I think.
Sure.
I guess you could say I get referrals as leads, but not as customers. I think most businesses, when they talk about, oh, can you give me a referral? What
Mm-hmm.
they mean is, I'm a plumber. If you could refer someone else to me who needs plumbing work done, then that'll help. But that's more of like referring a customer. For me, it's more how do I refer readers or people to come to my site in the first place.
Okay, I see. Well, you explained that just so we can understand what helps you. What book would you recommend to the Biz Stories shared listeners?
Well, it depends on what you're struggling with or what you're working on doing. I find that most people, they spend their time planning and debating and thinking about all the stuff they want to do rather than creating and actually producing it. And so if that's the case, then I think the book The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield is an amazing book for sort of getting you off your butt and producing the things that you want to make,
Okay.
and sort of pursuing your life calling, so to speak, and actually making a difference with that. So The War of Art by Pressfield is great, and then there are a range of great science books and stuff, but I'll stick with that for the time being.
All right, thank you. Well, James, I've truly enjoyed listening to your journey, and the stories that you shared were inspiring. Thank you for being so generous with your time, expertise, and experiences. Will you please share one more time how we can be in touch with you and any other resources you want us to have, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure. So as we've mentioned throughout this conversation, I write every Monday and Thursday at jamesclear.com. So if you'd like to check that out, feel free to go over there. Also, a lot of our conversation revolved around habits, how to build them, how to make better habits, how to break bad ones, so to speak. And I put together a 45-page guide on this. It's a free PDF. If you'd like to download that, you can get it at jamesclear.com/habits, and you can grab the free download there.
And I did. I have that. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay, listeners, you can find links to this resource and everything else that we've been chatting about in today's episode by going to bizstoryshared.com/jamesclear. Thank you, James. We'll talk to you again. Bye.
Great. Thanks so much.
Give the storyteller some love. Go to bizstoryshared.com, click on the iTunes button, and give a 5-star review. Thanks.